Premier League is back. I'm buzzing. These are my predictions. Wait, no. These are spoilers. Obviously, I'm going to get all of these right. We're going to be doing a tier list in terms of where each team's going to be finishing, and obviously I'm going to give you a bit of information as to why I think each team will finish there. Before we get started, make sure to hit like and subscribe, or your team will come last. Bottom of the Premier League, we have Leicester. I'm putting Leicester last. I don't want any of the teams that came up to go down at all. Last year we had a case where all three that came up went straight back down. It's boring. We don't really want that in our Barclays, but I do worry for Leicester, I have to say. Obviously, you've got the looming threat of a possible points deduction, but it's more the fact that they've lost their manager in Enzo Maresca. Not that I think Steve Cooper's a bad guy, or a bad-looking guy, but Steve Cooper, it's a lot to do. Losing Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, their best player last season, easily, and they're having struggles. We're seeing Hoffenheim pinch their players yesterday in terms of a deal that they looked to go over the line. It was completely hijacked. It feels like a bit of a mess at Leicester. I don't mind the Decordova-Reid signing or making sure Fatawu stays at the club, but for me, I think Leicester will go down. I think they will come bottom. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope a 37-year-old Jamie Vardy proves me wrong. 19th, we have Southampton. Yes, I am putting two of our three promoted clubs down, straight back down. Literally out of the first two options, I've gone with these guys. I think Southampton, as much as Russell Martin's an ambitious coach and wants to play possession football, I think that could also be his downfall. I think when you look at a lot of Premier League clubs, in terms of teams that come up, when they try and play that possession-based football, it doesn't go too well. Look at Vincent Kompany's Burnley last year, absolutely flying in the Championship, and they really struggled. They were getting hit for 6 for fun, and it was only towards the end they tried to mount a bit of a fight, but it was all too little too late. I do like Ugachukwu going on loan to Southampton. I'm a Chelsea fan, so I'm talking about Maresca and Dewsbury-Hall and Ugachukwu here, but he's a good player, and I think he'll help them in that regard. He'll have a good loan. But Lallana, as much as it's a move that fills my heart, I like a nostalgic move. I like the idea of him going home to Southampton. It's very Barclays, but I just don't think they have enough. I don't think they have enough firepower. And yeah, when you come to the Premier League, I feel like you've got to impose a different kind of threat. You've got to look at alternate methods. Like I said, I think that possession sort of football tends to really get found out against teams of a higher quality. And teams like Brentford have made themselves Premier League mainstays through using alternative methods, through having amazing routines of set pieces, from being physically imposing. You know, Dyche's Burnley. Sean Dyche knew what to do. Like, those kind of teams stay around a lot longer, and for me, Southampton aren't looking to do that. Even Palace in their earlier days were a bit more physical and now have grown into what they are because of their 10-year stay. Do I think Ipswich are going to come 18th? No. I've got Fulham. I've got Fulham in 18th. I know, guys, controversial. Is it because I'm a Chelsea fan I want to see them go down? No. Do you know why? For me, losing Mitrovic last year was massive. And I can only give more credit to Marco Silva. Marco Silva has done a wicked job at Fulham last year. Not just last year. Marco Silva has done a wicked job at Fulham full stop. But losing Mitrovic and having, Muniz chip in with enough goals, okay, that worked out a little bit. But losing Palhinha now as well, I don't think there was a need to get rid of Decordova-Reid, Willian going. And what they've brought in a player like Smith Rowe. Now, Smith Rowe is a talented player. Do not get it twisted. The way he brings the ball forward, dribbling, the fact that he can give you goals. But can he give you games? Like, Smith Rowe is someone for the last few years we've not even really seen. And that's not even just because Arteta's not been picking him or giving him minutes. That's also because he's not been physically fit. And I don't think he'll be that present for Fulham this season. I think they've lost a lot. Marco Silva will be the determining factor as to whether Fulham can stay up. And my hunch is Marco Silva could leave mid-season. I think, maybe we end up looking at him, maybe Man United, Spurs, we'll get to that later, could end up looking at him or a club abroad. I do think it's a lot for him to do, and he's proven himself to the point that he'll think, I can't take this any further. I might jump before I'm pushed in terms of taking them down, and it loses a bit of his stock. In 17th, we have Ipswich. I think they're just going to stay up. I know a lot of people are tipping Ipswich to stay up because of the amazing job that Kieran McKenna has done at the club, back-to-back promotions. If they were to stay in the Premier League as well, wow, what 3 seasons that guy's had. And I think they'll do it. They're going to do it. They're doing great.
Doing great. Gonna do it.
But Amari Hutchinson, it was important for them to keep hold of him. They've also added Delap, who's a very talented striker. They're looking at Brozier, apparently. I'm not so sure on that business. Calvin Phillips is an interesting one to me. And it's more interesting because I think, has McKenna seen how Pep's used Calvin Phillips as a centre-back and gone with that? Or is he playing Calvin Phillips how he was used at City and West Ham before, where he looks done? As a centre-back, maybe he could thrive. And I've also been told by a reputable source, Callum Fowler, that Davis will get 1 million assists. So, yeah, I think Ipswich will have enough. They play good football, and they've got that fighting spirit. And I spoke there about alternative methods that other clubs should use to try and stay up. As much as Ipswich maybe don't do that to the same degree, what they do have is 97th minute winners every single week. And they were doing that for fun in the Championship. And that's symbolic of an amount of fight that they have, fighting spirit. And that kind of thing, that can carry you over the line to enough games, enough points, that you do stay up. And you pip Fulham to stay 17th. In 16th, we have Nottingham Forest. Now, Nottingham Forest, for me, some people would tip them to maybe go down. I think they got too much quality. I think in a player like Awoniyi, keeping him fit is the biggest thing. Now, he has a lot of issues with injuries, but if they can keep him fit for over 50% of the season, they'll probably finish higher than that, genuinely. I like a lot of their players. Morgan Gibbs-White is a wicked player. Hudson-Odoi has really kicked on, again, which is lovely to see, to be honest. But yeah, Gibbs-White and Awoniyi are players for me that I think, particularly if Awoniyi could show he can maintain fitness, top clubs should be looking at. Genuinely, they are that good. They are really good players. And that player quality will prevail for me and mean that they should be safe. They've got enough. And even Murillo. They're keeping Murillo. And he's looked like a really good centre-back at Forest. So yeah, for me, they're calm. 15th, we have Wolves. Now, Wolves lost Pedro. We have Wolves. Yeah, we have... Tier list, we have Wolves. Do not test me. I do not need to be tested. Chelsea are going to test me enough this season, I reckon, anyway. But Wolves, for me... 15th, Gary O'Neill does a good job. He kept Bournemouth up. He was comfortable with Wolves. He was comfortable with Bournemouth. And even losing Neto, this is something that they are accustomed to. Neto has had his fair share of injuries, so they know how to play without the guy. Like, Cunha is a good player. They kept hold of Aït-Nouri. Hwang chips in. Like, Wolves have got some good players. And I know losing Kilman's a big thing, but at 40 million, they could be reinvesting that. It remains to be seen what they do in the rest of the window. But Wolves, for me, should be fine. I know that they've kind of not really flirt with relegation, but, you know, they're not one of the highest finishers in the season, obviously, but they've got enough. And in Gary O'Neill, they've got a coach that knows how to keep them up. He's been calm the last few years. I think they're accustomed to playing without Neto. I think they'll be fine. In 14th, we have Brentford. Now, Brentford could have been tipped for relegation, and I'm sure some people have gone with them because they were sliding down the league last season, and you felt like Tony would leave. Tony's not leaving. No one's coming in for Tony at the moment. And I think that's a good thing for Brentford fans. Not just because you're keeping a good player, because there's also the fact that they could lose him for £0. And that is a deciding factor as to whether I think Tony will have an even better season than he had the one before last where he was banned. Tony will be looking at next summer thinking, okay, if I leave on a free, I can demand a fair bit in wages. Like, players leaving for free, it's no secret that when the club doesn't pay a transfer fee, that player can turn around to said club and go, look, you didn't pay anything for me, so I know you got some spare change back there. I would like some of that spare change. And he's going to put himself in the best position to do so by having a really good season. And also, Brentford keeping in Buemo is big. I'm surprised no one's taken a punt on him because he's a wicked player. And last year, Brentford never really had those two available simultaneously. They had it briefly, but not for too long. And Buemo had injuries, Tony had bans. Like, as much as they were sliding, they didn't really have both their best players available. And I do think they will have that this season. They've also got the fact that they're so threatening from set pieces. Despite Chelsea taking their set piece coach, I'm pretty sure the muscle memory will be there to the point that they know how to exploit other teams defensively in taking advantage of those set pieces. So yeah, for me, Brentford have got too much threat. And Thomas Frank is too stable a coach to go down this season. I think they've got enough. Next up, we have Brighton. I've gone Brighton for 13th, guys, if they'll let me put them there. But yeah, Brighton for me are an interesting one. They've hired a child as manager. They've gone even more Todd Boehly than Todd Boehly himself. Like, genuinely, a 31-year-old as manager. Do you know how mental that is? James Milner's at least 52, and he's playing for them. Like, it is a nuts appointment. Regardless of what he's done in his previous jobs, like, that is a big risk, naturally. But what Brighton do have is some fun players. Like, that front three, Matoma was someone that was missing a lot of last season. And he's a wicked player. Obviously, he's written his thesis on dribbling, but he's a talented footballer that will give you goals, give you assists, win you pens that João Pedro will put away, because that man loves a pen. He scores goals, a lot of them are pens. It doesn't matter, he scores goals, he wins you points. And now you've got Minter, who's joined from Newcastle, very talented, did well at Feyenoord, and I think as a front three, that's exciting for Brighton fans, regardless of whether they have a child or a toddler as manager. They've got some good players there, you know, Stupian, Dunk, etc. They all do a job. Like, it'll be interesting to see the result of, you know, spiky haired man leaving, and they had a really bad end to the last season. a really bad end, and that does need to come to an end. But I don't think it'll come to an end in terms of a Premier League stay. I think it's a risk with the child in charge, but they've got enough quality, particularly in that front three for me, that they should be 13th. In 12th, we have Sean Dyche's Everton. The Toffees are coming 12th, and I'll tell you why. It's hurting my voice. I'll do it for Dyche, right. Keep Calvert-Lewin fit, cross it in the box, score goals. Dyche does not get the credit he deserves because, let's be honest, let's call a spade a spade. That man kept Burnley in the Premier League for years. That man got Burnley Europe. And Vincent Kompany takes Burnley down and gets the Bayern job. Like, when is Sean Dyche going to get his flowers? When is he going to get the credit he deserves? Even last season, it went underrated. It went under the radar to me. Everton had points deductions continuously. And not just the fact that they lost points, it's also the factors you don't consider in terms of what does that do to you mentally as a player where you're like, are we fucking losing 15 points here? Like, what's going on? What's going on? Like, let us know. Oh, it's changed. It's 8 points. It's 5 points. That's a lot to deal with. But Goodison Park has that amazing hostile atmosphere that can take them over the line and did do with Frank Lampard. But with Sean Dyche, there's a different level of stability. Like, without those point deductions last season, Everton had a decent season. They had a decent season anyway. Like, staying up with points deductions and their squad, impressive. And I don't see why they can't finish 12th to me, unless they were hit with more points deductions, but they'll be fucking fine, alright? Dyche knows what he's doing. And 11th, we've got Bournemouth. I'm going Bournemouth just ahead of Everton. That's a tough one. It's a bit of a toss-up for me. Bit of a toss-up with the Toffees and the Cherries, but they've lost Solanke. I know that's a big loss. They've signed Evan Nilsson for like 45 million from Porto, so let's see what this Brazilian striker's about. But for me, Solanke taking off as he did, it's obviously to do with the player. The player improved. His finishing got a little bit better. But it wasn't like a drastic difference in finishing. It's the fact that they're so well coached. Iriola is someone that I think a lot of other top clubs will start to look at, definitely, even just outside of that bracket. Because the job he's doing at Bournemouth is fantastic. They play good football. They've still got players like Kirkes. They've got quality there. But with other clubs, I've factored in the fact that I think they have too much quality to go down or whatever, or to have a good season. With Bournemouth, the main quality is that manager. Like, they were finding Solanke more. It wasn't a case of suddenly he was this amazing player and he was really bad before. He was still a decent player. But Bournemouth can create more. They're more stable. They're more solid. Like, he has been a real breath of fresh air for them. Obviously, they did stay up for multiple years under Eddie Howe, but they've kind of found their Eddie Howe. They found a new Eddie Howe, and his name is Iriola. And I don't see why they can't come, close to the top half, even without Solanke. Number 10, we have back-to-back top half finishes for Crystal Palace. Last year was the first time in their 10-year stay. This will be season number 11 for Palace since coming up with Ian Holloway. But Palace, as much as they've lost Elise, and don't get me wrong, that's a big loss, but it's not someone they're not used to losing. Like, he had his fair share of injuries. It kind of gets overlooked. But Gahey would be a big loss. Of course it would. Anderson and Gahey is one of the best partnerships outside the top six in terms of centre-backs. One of the best partnerships of centre-backs in the Premier League. Like, genuinely, really solid. But what Palace have is they still have quality in Eze. They still have Jean-Philippe Mateta, who is just bursting with goals. Like, this guy is prime Barclays. He is Andy Johnson from the 04-05 campaign for Palace, but better. He's even better because he's not just relying on diving for pens. Like, Mateta's doing bits, and he's doing bits at the Olympics as well. The guy cannot stop scoring, and I think that will long continue at Palace. I think he's going to be a fan favourite for years to come. And it's an interesting one with Palace, because as much as, Munoz coming in is a big one, Wharton and keeping hold of him is a big one for Palace. That was a transformative signing, but not as transformative as Glasner. Like, Glasner and Wharton were kind of hand in hand to an extent. They still had Roy Hodgson when the player was brought in, but Palace were criticised as fans a lot because they wanted rid of Roy Hodgson. It was mental. Like, when you're a fan and you're watching your team every week, and in Palace, they had players like Elise, Eze, Mateta, before that Wilf. They knew they had good players. They knew they could be better. And you've got people sitting there, being condescending, sitting there saying, he's done a good job in keeping you up. Why aren't you happy? And you're watching it every week being like, because I know they're better than that. I know they're better than that. And I can prove they're better than that. And Glasner proved they're better than that. You're watching performances like Anfield last season after Roy Hodgson had left. And only then are people giving credit to Palace fans and going, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough, you had a point. Of course they had a point. It's the most frustrating thing as a football fan. You'll know it. I know it as a Chelsea fan, where the media will talk about your club. They're not living and breathing it every week. They're not watching every minute every week. And they make sweeping statements that they don't know the meaning of. Like, genuinely, I felt for Palace fans. I have some mates who are Palace fans, and I knew how strong they felt in regards to Roy and that they could improve. And they had good players, and that was obvious. And now you're seeing it. Like, you're seeing that system tick with Wharton, and regardless of Elise and potentially Gahey leaving, they could bring in like someone like Trevor Chalobah, who would genuinely do a good job. He's a good player, but they got good players still, and they got a wicked manager. They are going to be a team to watch this season in terms of just enjoy them, man. Palace, they're coming top half again, and ahead of Brighton, which they'll be happy about. In ninth, bit controversial, we've got Aston Villa. Aston Villa in ninth, not 10th. No, not that harsh. Villa, for me, will be ninth, but not because they had a bad season. Villa will have a good season. Like, Villa are in the Champions League. Think how nuts that is. I grew up seeing good Villa sides, Martin O'Neill Villa sides with Melberg, Larson, Young, Abonglaho, Carew, Petrov and Barry. Like, they were good teams. But they always knocked on that Champions League door till about February, maybe fell off around then, maybe they got European players, etc. But they were never a Champions League club. They've got into the Champions League. What Unai Emery's done is sensational at Villa. But I think them being in Europe is a big one. Now, Unai Emery is a master of European football, but not the Champions League. That man is a Europa League man. He's a like, that's what he loves. And I think they'll exit into that and have a really good run in the Europa League. That's what I think Villa and Unai Emery are destined for. Unai Emery is in love with the Europa League. We know this. So that's how I think that will unfold. They will have more injuries, and they've got a decent squad, but losing players like Diaby and Douglas Luiz, I don't think that's the most helpful. I know Onana could be an interesting signing. That's definitely something I want to keep an eye on because he's a really good player that maybe didn't fit the environment so much at Everton, but at Villa maybe he's a bit more suited. Maatsen should do well, depending on how much of a wing-back system it is, I suppose, at Villa. But I think Villa this season will have a really fun time. Villa fans are going to love being in Europe. Of course they will. Like, proper Champions League level, big ties. Go into Europa, have a really good run in that. Maybe win it. Imagine if they win it. That would be wicked. But, yeah, I think that will affect their league form to the point they come ninth. And put it this way, by the way, ninth and fourth, it's tough to call. But in eighth, just ahead of Villa, I have gone West Ham. I was a bit uncertain with this one, to be fair, because I like some of West Ham's business, and some of it you could question, and you're valid to question it, by the way, because what I would say is, how it could be framed, West Ham have a bloated squad. Moyes did a good job as manager. Why are they getting rid of him? They've just signed Todibo and Kilman when they already have Zuma, who hasn't gone. He failed his medical. Mavropanos and Aged. They don't need 5 centre-backs. Why have they signed Foderingham? They already have Fabianski and Areola. See, if I was the media, that's how I'd frame it. I'd say bloated squad. Moyes did a good job. What are you asking for? He won you something. But, understandably, West Ham fans were watching that every week, and they know this squad's capabilities is higher than that of Moyes. Gonzalo Lopetegui did a good job at Wolves, and like I said, this squad is bursting with talent. Like, Wan-Bissaka as a signing can lock up any left winger in the world, even the best. Like, that's how good he can be defensively. Their centre-back partnership should be good. They've got enough there. Emerson's a decent left-back, decent keeper. You've got Lucas Paqueta. Depending on what happens with the betting thing there, I'm interested to see. Maybe that would affect my decision, but for now, he's there. Alvarez did a good job last season. And then the front four is what's so interesting. You've got Somerville who's just been signed. The player of the championship, basically. Definitely Leeds' best player. He's an exciting signing. You've got Fulkrug, an old school 9, down to the broken teeth. He is as old school as it comes. Is it a sensible bit of business? Is it fuck, if we're honest? 30 million on a 31-year-old that's never played Premier League football, that comes with a risk. That comes with a risk whether you want to ignore it or not. And I want to ignore it because I like the guy. He's old school. I can kick it really hard. I can head it really hard. Like, that's a striker. That's a striker's striker. But I don't know. There's no resale value in it, and he might not adapt. Like, who knows? It could be a bad bit of business, but he'll be fun to see. But more important than that is the players that are established that are very good at West Ham, and that's Kudus and Bowen as well. Like, they are wicked players. They guarantee you goals, they guarantee you assists, and they guarantee you, some excitement. That's what West Ham fans have been asking for. At the root of it, as much as they won their Conference League with Moyes in a poor season, like league-wise it wasn't very good. So there was always that lingering resentment to a degree. As much as they appreciate Moyes, I'm sure they do. Like, obviously they won something. But I can also understand that they're looking at these players and they're like, we could be more exciting than this. We don't have to play Moyes ball. As much as I think this squad is so suited to Moyes doing well and probably coming in the same position, I can understand it. So, yeah, I think West Ham are going to be an interesting one this season. They'll come 8th, but they could be higher. They could be a little bit lower. They're going to be there or thereabout. In 7th, we have Manchester United. Can everyone stop losing their mind about Manchester United? Because what's changed? What's changed? What? Did Delit's come in? You mean another signing that Ten Hag worked with? You mean another big name that's been passed around Europe more than your mum? Like, that is a Glazer signing, a De Ligt. I know he's younger. He's not Casemiro Varane in terms of age, but, like, that is the most Glazer signing you can get. Oh, what? Bayern and Juve's hand-me-downs. Like, the guy is the João Felix of centre-backs. It's just... I cannot understand it, why everyone's shifted opinion. Lenny Yora's out for injury for months anyway. Luke Shaw's never fit, which I think Mazraoui's a good signing, because Dalot and Mazraoui kind of offer you the same thing, where they can play either side, and it gives you some stability there. I get that. Mount will come back. Mount probably play a lot more this season. Well, he can't play less. He barely played last season, but he's not going to start. Like, he's not going to start ahead of Bruno. And if he plays with Bruno, that midfield is just... I don't know. I can't see it working. They've signed Xerxes, obviously a talented player. Is he going to start ahead of Højlund or with Højlund? Does that mean Garnacho gets a shove? Rashford, what's happening with that? I mean, the positives for United are some of those players are really good, and also the fact that Ten Hag's realised Diallo is a footballer and Antony is a Beyblade. Like, that's a big thing for Ten Hag to realise. I don't know how it took so long to realise it, but he did. There are positives, and that's why I've put them above 8th. They came 8th last year. I've put them 7th. The biggest thing I think people look at why United will improve is the fact they were so injured last season. No Martinez, etc. All the injuries. Spurs had injuries last season. Newcastle had injuries last season. Chelsea had injuries last season. As many as United. Comfortably more in some of those cases. And they all finished ahead of United. They were all better than United. United's FA Cup has maybe revised how they've been perceived. I don't really get it in that regard. So I don't see why it would be any different. And I also don't see why, because the style that Ten Hag plays with, in being so stretched and everyone's sprinting about for 90 minutes, they will get more injuries. And they've got Europa League this season. It's not like they're out of Europe like some teams when that can help. Man United will be playing European football this season, and their squad will have to deal with that, and they have to deal with playing the way that Ten Hag wants to play, which is very encouraging of injuries. Like, I don't see anything changing there. I really don't. I think they could finish a little bit higher if they sack Ten Hag earlier. Like, the sooner that goes up, like, Ten Hag will not be here past next year. No chance. No chance. I'd be surprised if he's here past this calendar year. Like, I don't know why they've given him a new deal. Thomas Tuchel's waiting there, and I feared the idea that they get Tuchel. And if Tuchel came in, I'd put them a lot higher, put it that way. But yeah, for me, they are 7th. Everyone losing their head about United. It happens every year. And you know what else happens every year? Everyone loses their mind about Spurs. Have we all been Men in Black mind blanked? Spurs, from November onwards, were crap. They were awful. They were absolutely dreadful. They could not defend. Nah, mate, I don't believe in defending set pieces. Who fucking cares about set pieces, mate? We've signed Timo Werner. That'll fix it. He's been really good in the Premier League the last few years. James Maddison, he turns up for at least 4 games a season. Son, well, Son's a bit cooked, but yeah, he should be more cooked this year. We've signed Dom Solanke. Actually, no, Dom Solanke's a good signing. I like the Dom Solanke signing. But why have people revised what Spurs are? And also, they're Spurs. You had Big Ange. Oh, mate, why do they want City to win the league? We want to win games, mate. We want to see Arsenal win the league. Like, going against your own fans. You better start well then. Spurs usually do start well, because everyone loses their mind about Spurs. Every year, everyone goes, Spurs are going to win the league. Spurs look amazing. They're guaranteed. Spurs had top 4 in the bag and didn't get top 4. That's so Spurs. And every year it's so Spurs. That's why you've got Big Ange losing his mind at the end of the season. That's why Conte lost his mind at the end of the season. That's why Mourinho lost his mind at the end of the season. It is the history of the Tottenham.
It's the history of the Tottenham.
And no one seems to remember it. It's actually mental. Like, if you go into this season, surely you're looking at how teams performed on the back half rather than the front half. Doesn't that make more sense? Like, we always focus on the back around here. But yeah, with Spurs, I cannot understand it, why people have revised their opinions. I know they had injuries, but we play a fucking high line, mate. Like, it's stupid. It's stupid. Like, surely you got to adapt it a little bit. I know Spurs are fun to watch. Do not get it twisted, by the way. Spurs are really fun to watch. I would never deny that. They concede goals, they score goals, and they score great goals. Like, their attacking patterns of play are brilliant. Couldn't knock them for that. But people get so carried away with Spurs off of nothing. Archie Gray is not going to lift this Spurs side. Like, they were a really bad side from November onwards. I think they were 8th. And you had the manager calling out the fans. And they're going into this new season. Like, it better go well. Big Ange will not be at Spurs within a year. And that might be because he upgrades, because don't get me wrong, the guy plays amazing attacking football. But it could also be because he leaves, or he's sacked, or whatever. Genuinely. That would not surprise me in the slightest. Stop losing your mind about Spurs, alright? And also, they will probably end up starting well, because that's what Spurs do. And people will come to me and go, why have you put Spurs to the... Watch. They're Spurs. In 5th, I have Newcastle. The They're doing grit.
You're doing great.
I'm putting Newcastle 5th because no European football is a big factor for me. And also the fact their first team will have been strengthened. Tonali was a big buy, an exciting buy. They even started the season great last year. And I know he's had a year out of football, but like he's a wicked player that enhances Newcastle United. They've kept hold of Bruno Guimaraes. They've kept hold of Isak. They're looking to sign Gahey, which strengthens their defence. And I think you'll see the emergence of Lewis Hall at left back. Lewis Hall is a wicked player, by the way. And you know, there's not even loads of Chelsea sales that I really regret as much as people will slag off what our owners are currently doing. Like in terms of players you want to sell, a lot of them are understandable. Lewis Hall for me wasn't really understandable. I think he's just a really good left back, and he will start to excel that and nail down that first team spot as left back of Newcastle United. But they've got good players. Gordon stayed as well. He had links to Liverpool. Like Gordon, Isak, Guimaraes, Tonali, Gahey. That's a good team that has no Europe. So they should have less injuries. My only worry is a bit like United. The way that Eddie Howe plays with that intensity does lend itself to injuries. So they will have a bit of an issue there. But make no mistake, Newcastle for me are more of a threat for top 4, etc. than Spurs or United. Like they're weirdly going under the radar. Last time they had no Europe, they got top 4. They're very capable. In 4th place, we have Chelsea. Come on, Chelsea. Am I being biased? No. Look, the reason I'm going Chelsea is not even just because like, oh, I want my team to do well. Of course I want my team to do well. And do I have my doubts? Yeah, I have my doubts. We hired Leicester's manager that even then was getting criticism despite winning the league. We are us and we're very erratic. Some of the sales in terms of Gallagher going, Trevor going, it's a bit like, oh, I'm not the biggest fan of that. I understand it, but I'm not the biggest fan. Silver's gone. I get all that. But what I would say about Chelsea, and this is statistical fact, from November onwards, Chelsea were 4th. And Chelsea on the eye were quite easily the 4th best team in the league. They were better than your Villas, your Spurs, your Newcastles, Uniteds, whatever. They were better than those teams, point-wise and everything. They started the season the first 3 months awfully. Poch was stinking it up. But they were, after that, as much as there were some frustrating performances, etc., Chelsea were the 4th best team. I'm not saying that makes Chelsea good. I've seen actual good Chelsea sides. I've seen great Chelsea sides. This Chelsea side is not a good Chelsea side. But there's some nice parts. There's some nice players who had started to gel together. The first 3 months, bloated squad, they're not all playing together. They started to play together and they got better. Caicedo settled in and looks wicked. You've got Cole Palmer was one of the players of the season. Malagusto's a wicked player. Cucurella settled in and has become a wicked player. Jackson's a decent player. You've signed Neto. Neto strengthens our attack. And Nkunku and Lavia, you didn't even see them last season, and we were still better than most of the teams we're competing with this season. We've got them to add. And Nkunku's someone that gives us goals. That was something we were missing, a clinical finisher. And Nkunku is far more clinical than a lot of our other players. Lavia is someone who can start games and can be an impact off the bench as well. And yeah, we have Conference League football, but Chelsea, if anything, have a big enough squad to be dealing with that in comparison to some other ones. Like, we have some depth. Then you've got your Dewsbury Halls, your Vegas coming in, obviously. But Chelsea, like I said, last season proved for the latter half they were better than those sides. And you'd argue they strengthened. Regardless of whether you think, oh, Silva's a bit of a loss, who wasn't really playing at the end of the season. Gallagher's a loss. I agree. He would be a squad player for me, especially when Chelsea want to play possession football. Gallagher is someone who, I see him like an attacking John Obi Mikel. You bring him on 20 minutes to go. He's a Duracell bunny who presses the life out of everyone, running around 100 miles an hour while everyone's shattered. That would be perfect Conor Gallagher role for me. And he would play in games where you have less of the ball. But Chelsea want to be this team that has a lot of the ball. That's why they hired Enzo Maresca. That's why they looked at him and went, he looks like Pep, we're hiring Pep. That is exactly why Chelsea have done that, and that is why they've looked at this as a sale where they could make money on it. But in terms of the players that they have, they do suit that, and they will suit that, and Chelsea will be 4th. I honestly cannot understand. I can understand, because we are very chaotic. Sorry, that's the wrong way of putting it. I can understand that aspect of things, of being tentative to put Chelsea that high or whatever. I get that. But the way we're being written off, and then other teams being promoted who have like done nothing, and we're just better than them. We've shown we're better than them. We've added. Meanwhile, those teams have barely added, or like given Ten Hag a new deal, and then for some reason they're great. Whatever. Okay, we'll see, won't we? But yeah, I think Chelsea will come 4th. Up the Chelsea. 3rd place, I have Liverpool. Now people have their doubts about Liverpool because obviously the factor of Klopp's gone. Arne Slot's come in. Arne Slot's had a good pre-season. Not that means loads, but you know. That's a positive, isn't it? They're all going to take it as a bad thing. The lack of signings is interesting. And Zubimendi could have elevated them to a new level. Definitely secured 3rd. But I would imagine they'll come 3rd. I hope hopefully Chelsea can outdo them. But what I would say with Liverpool is it's player quality. A bit like when I was talking about Chelsea there with Palmer, I said they're good players there. With Liverpool, You have three key players. And Trent's assists as well, but you do have Salah, who gets you goals. Doesn't matter who's there. Graham Potter could be in charge. Salah will score goals. Van Dijk and Alisson will get you clean sheets. They are people that turn losses into draws and draws into wins. That is what they do. That's what Alisson does numerous times. 1v1. He will save Liverpool so many points. He will save more points than most keepers in Premier League history. That's what that guy does. Van Dijk will do the same. And Salah scores goals to a ridiculously consistent level that will turn draws into wins and losses into draws. Like, that's what these players do. And regardless of who's in charge, they will continue to do that. So I just think player quality wise, and obviously I like players like McAllister as well. Quance is developing into a good player. They'll maybe use Bajcetic a lot more if he's not injured now. Like, they have good players anyway. But those three, for me, as well as, Trent chipping in with assists, etc., they're just a guarantee of ways to get points. And for that reason, I've got them third. I'm also excited to see this filthy little slot. Like, I want to see the football because, Feyenoord were known for playing some good football, entertaining. The fans liked it. I've seen even some of the training methods were quite interesting. I saw the whole no flicks sort of philosophy that Arne Slot works with, where he doesn't want to see any of that. He always wants the players to be able to receive on the half turn, etc., without the use of just using some fancy flick which could put them in danger in their own half. So yeah, it's a way of making players more comfortable in terms of how they receive the ball or whatever it might be. That I'll be interested to see how it's implemented throughout the season. He could be awful. Maybe he's gone. A lot of people think, maybe they're going to be dreadful this season. But yeah, I just think player quality should carry Liverpool enough to definitely get top four. Now we have the top two. I'm going to cover them both at the same time. Cover them all in my opinions. There's a new champion in town. And I hate to say it. I really hate to say it. I fucking hate Arsenal. I hate everything about that club. I hate their players, I hate their manager, I hate their fans, I hate their shitty song. I hate everything about them. They're whining and whinging and crying and victiming. I cannot stand them. But they're going to win the league. And I'll tell you why. City, last season, they were quite lucky to win the league in a way. They deserved to win the league because they got the amount of points they did. Of course they did. But this City side under Pep was the worst Pep City side to win the league, in my opinion. By quite a distance. I know people look at maybe like 2021. I would say that those false nine rotations, etc., was still a better team with Gundogan, whatever. Last season, Foden was brilliant. Haaland had a lot of injuries. They managed to go over the line. De Bruyne coming back was a big one. But De Bruyne is only going to continue to get more injuries. And Foden's a big question mark for me. Not that he wasn't the best player in the league last season, because he was. That's what I thought he was. But that Euros campaign was so bad. It will be interesting to see how quickly he can recover from it. And he will recover. But I'm wondering, immediately at the start of the season, is he going to be great again? It wouldn't really make much sense, would it? To suddenly slot in and he's just like, bang, right, back to amazing. Like, he was awful in that Euros. And I imagine that would weigh on his head a little bit to a degree. It would do, wouldn't it? If you or me do something and we perform really badly, you're in your head about it, especially if on a consistent basis you're thinking, I'm fucking stinking at the moment. What's going on? And that's going to be going on for Foden. So that's an interesting one. Oscar Bob is someone I thought would have a really big season. He's had a big injury now. So that's a big knock for City, genuinely, more than people think it is. Can Rodri keep going? That's a big question. Haaland's had the summer off, and that will be interesting to see. I think Haaland will have more goals this season than he did last. Like, he'll be closer to his first season because of that break, because he's more rested. Maybe we'll back up to speed. He had an injury to do with last season. Whether he shakes that off this season, I don't know, because it was something that was happening when he was at Dortmund as well. But, the holes that players like Gundogan have left, in terms of Kovacic and Nunez, they're just not Gundogan. They're just not at that level. City do not dominate as much as they did before. They don't feel as much of a threat as they were before. They feel like Rodri, De Bruyne when he's there, Haaland, Foden, they just had more. Like Mahrez, etc. Doku has to have a big year. He has to be a lot more threatening, I think. Obviously, the guy wants to take players on, but I feel like at the moment, that's kind of all he wants to do is take players on rather than drive directly at goal. And when he does that, he's brilliant. But he needs to do it on a more consistent basis. Savio will be interesting to see. I'm excited to see him as a player. But yeah, Bob is a bit of a shame for me. I think it's a weird one because it's Pep's last year. And that's why a lot of people think they'll do it. They'll win the league. It's Pep's last year. They will go 5 in a row. And I don't think it will. I just think they're kind of at the end of their tether. It's at the end of the City cycle. And Pep's maybe even looked at a player like Bob and thought, I can't let what happened to Palmer happen to you, where we've let that go and I didn't use him enough. He wants to bleed in that next gen of City and be responsible for seeing the fruits of his labour later down the line with another manager when he leaves, I think. I think you will see players like Bob play more. You will see McAtee, etc. play more. But I just don't think they have the quality they used to. I know Gvardiol was a wicked player and was really developing as well there. But like Stones has a lot of injuries. Walker's looking old. Edison's linked with moves. Bernardo's always linked with moves. And even Bernardo. Now, Bernardo is, for me, my favourite Silva City have had. And I know people say David Silva's a better player, whatever. Just in terms of like who I prefer, as like, I just love Bernardo Silva. He's as tenacious as he is technical. He can play every position. Like, I love the guy to bits. But even he's looking more at the end of his tether. De Bruyne, like, as much as people put De Bruyne in certain conversations, or he's an amazing player when he's there, and he's fantastic. Like, when he's there, he's the best player in the league. But it's when he's there. Like, that is a problem for City. The last few years, De Bruyne has had a lot more injuries, and I think that will only continue. And you're seeing the end of the cycle of the Pep cycle. Like, we are, you know, the dying embers of Pep is to be this year, in my opinion. And it will end with him actually not winning the league. I just don't think they'll have enough. As Arsenal, on the other hand, why will they be champions as opposed to why City won't be? Arsenal had the best defence in the league last year. What did they do? They looked at the only player that was a weakness in Zinchenko. Zinchenko, for me, is not very good. The rest of it was solid, compact, drilled. Zinchenko's not very good. He can invert in midfield. Great. Calafiori upgrades. Upgrades Arsenal. And now that Timber obviously coming back, whether he's just one of these players that doesn't really exist and he's just always injured, I don't know. But Calafiori is a big upgrade for Arsenal and only strengthens the best defence in the league further. And people might look at the lack of goal threat with Arsenal in terms of Havertz ended the season well. Can that be consistent? Probably not. It's Havertz. He's very patchy in that regard. And, you know, he can be a really good player, but we know what he's like. Martinelli, can't really rely on him in that regard. Trossard, really good impact off the bench. Maybe starts games less well than he ends them. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's a brilliant squad player to have, Trossard. I don't know why. I saw some people saying, like, oh, maybe he should be sold. Like, what? Great player to have in the squad. And Saka will give you goals. Like, the guy does that. Odegaard will give you goals, etc. They're wicked. They're wicked players. The reason Arsenal don't so much have to worry about goal threat is also because it comes from other ways. Set pieces, they are freaks. The physical floor of Arsenal is nuts. Absolute nuts. Doesn't matter who's on the end of those corners. Any of those centre-backs, by the way, will chip in with goals. Even Rice. I mean, Rice has been taking the corners, but you know what I mean? They've got some physical big players. Mikel Merino is a key addition once they get that done as well. Like, the midfield's transformative. I know people will say Arsenal need more goals. If they signed a striker as well, league done, wrapped. Like, there's no chance then, for me, that City win the league. But at the moment, obviously, City could still win it. They're still City. They're Pep Guardiola's City side. They're always going to be there or thereabouts. But I think Arsenal will have enough. Like, sadly, as much as it pains me and I hate it, they remind me of, like, the Mourinho-Chelsea core. Not necessarily just when Mourinho was there, but more, we were a physical team that would bully you. We'd score from set pieces. We could defend. We had goals in our team. We had goals shared amongst. You know, people will look at Drogba in the past where they'll slag him off because of lack of goals in certain seasons. Drogba was making goals in other ways, bullying whole back lines, and it didn't matter because Lampard would chip in, and Ballack would chip in, and Terry would get you 6-7 goals a season. Variety of ways of scoring goals and variety of goal scorers. You can compensate for not having that 30-goal season striker. In the case of, you know, Drogba, there were seasons where he won 2 golden boots. Like, it's not a coincidence. If you do have that striker who can get you a load of goals, brilliant. But Arsenal have enough threat that they can get by anyway, and an amazing enough defence that they can get over the line, turn losses into draws, turn draws into wins. And so for me, defences win you titles, and in this regard, it will for Arsenal. As much as I don't want it to fucking happen, I cannot stress this enough. Honestly, this would be my 9-11. This genuinely, this would destroy me, but I know I'm right. We know these are spoilers, not predictions, guys. So I'm a bit worried in that regard. But let me know what you think of the Premier League. How excited are you, by the way? How buzzing are you? I'm absolutely gassed. I am dancing on the ceiling at the thought of screaming at Chelsea annoying me. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to tuck into some Barclays. We've got Premier League every weekend. Every weekend, international break. Every weekend, international break. Every weekend, international break. And then every weekend for fucking ages, including the Christmas period. We've got Barclays coming out of our arses. It is back. But let me know what you think. What do you think about my predictions, or spoilers rather? Do you want to let me know your spoilers in the comments below? Please do. I'd like to hear them. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. It lets YouTube know that this is the place to be. This is the football place to be. It's the place for you to be. And yeah, enjoy, guys. Up the shelves.